On June 6, 2023, a SWAT team in Denver raided the wrong apartment while searching for a suspect. According to a later lawsuit, the suspect lived across the hall, but officers entered the apartment of an innocent family. Inside were a mother, a grandmother, and two young girls. The family reportedly told officers they had the wrong apartment, but the raid continued. The girls were frightened, and the family was removed while police searched the home. The incident later became the subject of a lawsuit filed under Colorado's police reform law. The lawsuit alleged that the family's constitutional rights were violated and that the officers used excessive force. It also said the children suffered serious trauma after the raid. This case is important because it is recent. Wrong house raids are not only old stories from decades ago. They still happen in modern cities, even with body cameras, digital records, GPS, radio communication, and advanced planning tools. That is what makes the Denver apartment raid so disturbing. The suspected target was reportedly nearby. The difference between the intended door and the wrong door was only a few steps. But for the innocent family inside, those few steps changed everything. A child does not understand legal procedures. A child does not understand warrants. A child only remembers armed strangers entering the home. The Denver case shows that verification must happen before the door is breached, not after. Because once officers enter the wrong home, the damage is already happening. Even if nobody is physically hurt, the fear can stay. And when young children are involved, a mistake that lasts minutes can become a memory that lasts years. On October 18, 2017, FBI agents in Georgia were trying to arrest a suspected gang member, but they entered the wrong home. Inside were Trina Martin, Hilliard Toy Klatt, and Martin's young son. The agents had intended to raid a nearby house. Instead, they forced their way into a home belonging to innocent people. The family was frightened, the home was damaged, and the mistake was quickly recognized. According to court records and later reporting, the FBI acknowledged that the wrong address had been hit. But the legal fight did not end there. Martin and Klatt later sued the federal government. Lower courts dismissed the lawsuit, but the case eventually reached the U.S. Supreme Court. In 2025, the Supreme Court allowed the lawsuit to continue, giving the family another chance to seek damages. That ruling mattered because wrong house raid victims often face a second battle after the raid itself, trying to hold the government accountable. For the family, the raid lasted only minutes, but the effects lasted years. A child had been inside the home. The family said they suffered trauma after the incident. The home had been damaged, and the people inside had done nothing wrong. This case showed how a small navigational or address mistake can become a major constitutional and legal issue. When federal agents enter the wrong home, the mistake is not just embarrassing, it changes lives. It also raises a serious question. If police or federal agents raid the wrong house, should the innocent family have the right to sue? The Supreme Court's decision did not fully end the case, but it reopened the door for accountability. And that made the Atlanta FBI raid one of the most important wrong house raid cases in recent years. On July 29, 2008, police raided the home of Chai Calvo, the mayor of Berwyn Heights, Maryland. The raid was connected to a drug investigation. A package containing marijuana had been shipped to Calvo's home, but Calvo and his family were not drug dealers. They had no connection to the package. Authorities later believed the home had been used as part of a delivery scheme without the family's knowledge. Still, police treated the house as a target. When officers entered, the situation became chaotic. Calvo and his mother-in-law were inside. His two dogs were shot and killed during the raid. The family was cleared, but the damage had already been done. Imagine being a public official, sitting in your own home, and suddenly being treated like a criminal because someone else sent a package to your address. That was what made this case so disturbing. It was not a case where police simply mistyped a number. The house was connected to the package, but the people living there were not connected to the crime. The raid showed how dangerous it can be when law enforcement treats a delivery address as proof of guilt. Afterward, Calvo became outspoken about police raid policies. He argued that stronger checks were needed before aggressive tactics were used on homes where innocent families could be present. The case gained national attention because it happened to a mayor, but the deeper issue was much bigger than one family. If this could happen to a mayor, people asked, how often could it happen to ordinary citizens without public attention? The Berwyn Heights raid showed that wrong house does not always mean the address was wrong. Sometimes the address is correct, but the assumption is wrong. And when police act on that assumption with force, innocent people can lose their safety, their trust, and even their pets in a matter of seconds. On November 21, 2006, Atlanta police raided the home of 92-year-old Katherine Johnston. They were looking for drugs, but the raid was based on false information. Johnston was an elderly woman living in her own home. When officers forced their way inside, she believed she was being attacked. She fired a shot in fear. Police fired back many times. Katherine Johnston was killed. After the shooting, the case became even worse. Investigations revealed that officers had lied to get the warrant. They had claimed a drug purchase was made at the home, but that story was false. After the shooting, there were also efforts to cover up what had happened. This was not just a wrong raid, it was a collapse of trust at every level. A woman who should never have been targeted was dead. The information used to justify entering her home was not real, and the people responsible had tried to protect themselves after the damage was done. The case shocked Atlanta and the rest of the country. 3 former Atlanta police officers later pleaded guilty in connection with the case and were sentenced to prison. The scandal forced serious questions about narcotics enforcement, informants, warrant approvals, and no-knock raids. Katherine Johnston's death became one of the most painful examples of what can happen when police power is built on lies. The tragedy was not caused by one small typo or one wrong house number. It came from false evidence, poor accountability, and a raid carried out against someone who should never have been in that situation. For the public, the case made one thing clear: a warrant is only as trustworthy as the information behind it. If that information is false, then the raid is not justice, it is danger. Katherine Johnston's home was supposed to be her safest place. Instead, it became the place where a false raid ended her life. On May 16, 2003, police in New York City raided an apartment in Harlem. They were looking for drugs and weapons connected to a suspected dealer, but when they broke into the apartment, they did not find the person they were looking for. They found Alberta Spruill. Spruill was a 57-year-old city employee. She had a heart condition. She was not the target police believed they were raiding. The raid was sudden and terrifying. Officers entered the apartment, and a flash device was used during the operation. For an innocent person waking up or being confronted inside her own home, the shock was overwhelming. Spruill was taken to the hospital. She died soon after. The official explanation later connected her death to the stress and shock of the raid. The mistake was devastating because the person inside the apartment had done nothing to deserve that kind of force. The case created outrage in New York. People wanted to know how police could enter the wrong home based on bad information. The raid was reportedly connected to information from an informant, but that information turned out to be wrong. For Spruill's family and community, the tragedy was not only that a mistake happened, it was that the mistake happened with overwhelming force. A door can be repaired, broken furniture can be replaced, but fear inside a home can leave a mark forever. And in Alberta Spruill's case, the raid did not just leave trauma, it ended her life. The case became a major example of why police cannot rely blindly on unverified tips. If the information is wrong, the power of a raid does not hit the suspect, it hits an innocent person. Alberta Spruill's story shows that a wrong house raid does not need gunfire to be deadly. Sometimes the shock itself is enough. On September 29, 1999, Denver police carried out a no-knock raid that ended in tragedy. The target was supposed to be a drug location, but the home officers entered belonged to Ismael Manna, a 45-year-old Mexican immigrant who was not the person they were looking for. The raid happened at night. Officers entered quickly under a no-knock warrant. In moments, confusion filled the home. Manna was shot and killed by SWAT officers during the entry. Afterward, no drugs were found inside the home. That detail changed the entire meaning of the raid. This was not just a failed search, It was a fatal mistake built on bad information. Reports and later criticism focused on the warrant process, the reliability of the information used, and whether the raid should ever have been approved. The case became one of Denver's most controversial police incidents. For Mena's family, the damage could never be undone. A man who had been inside his own home was dead. The people responsible had believed they were entering a dangerous drug location, but the facts behind the raid did not hold up. Public anger grew. Civil rights groups questioned the use of no-knock warrants, especially when the information supporting them was weak. The case also raised a painful question. How much verification should be required before police are allowed to break into a home without warning? The city later settled a lawsuit with Mena's family, but no settlement could bring him back. The Ismail Mena raid became a warning about the danger of treating uncertain information like confirmed truth. When officers are sent to the wrong place with high-risk tactics, the mistake does not feel like paperwork to the people inside. It feels like an invasion. And in this case, that ended with a man losing his life in the place where he should have been safest.